let's look at the whole thing about the demographics, and you can see now that we have multi-generations in the workforce. This economic crisis has caused the new normal to be that a lot of boomers aren't retiring because they can't afford to. They lost half of their retirement savings in the market. Got some of it back, but not nearly. It's only back maybe 25% of what it was. So a lot of catching up to do. If you look at the stock market, interestingly enough, the stock market's at the same level it was 11 years ago. So even if you've been in the market for a long time, unless you're extraordinarily lucky or good, you haven't made a lot of money. And certainly the people who have their money in 401ks have it. They're certainly because they're all in index funds. So the fact is that it's kind of been flat, and it's been a real ride up and down. So boomers happen to stay in the market. Then you get the Gen Xers and the millennials, and so the Gen X population, if you go back and look at birth rates, it's kind of interesting. 1957, the birth rate peaked with the boomer population. I think the average was 4 per woman. You look at 77, average was 2. Well, that's called the Gen X group. So what's happened is that the birth rate was basically cut in half. Now the good news is the millennials, not quite as big as the boomers, but a heck of a lot bigger than the Gen Xers. So the birth rate's coming back up again. I think the average is now close to 3. So it's coming back up, and I have 2 nieces with 6 and 5, so I can, on a count of 1, I can attest to the fact that it's better than 3. So, I was 2, but the fact is that, however, that's the good news. But the challenge for us in the next 15 to 20 years, as we look at this Gen X population, is twofold. One is that there are simply fewer people. There are simply fewer people. You have half the number of people in the labor force than the boomer population has. And so that's a problem, and it means that people at a younger age are going to have to accept more responsibility with less experience. And there's going to be extraordinary competition for those people because there aren't that many of them. And you're going to be competing, we are going to be competing with the for-profit world. So our value proposition to that population has to be pretty powerful. It's just based on the numbers. I think it evens itself out. But the other piece around this demographic is that the millennials aren't the Caucasian white population. They're not the black population. It's the Hispanic population. So that's where the growth is coming. That's where the huge, when the birth rate is going up, that's where it's coming from. And so when you look out there 15 to 20 years from now, I've read a number of statistics about labor force that says, if you're not bilingual 15 or 20 years from now, you're not going to be able to manage a workforce. Pretty much that simple. If you can't speak Spanish, you're not going to be able to manage a workforce. And for those of you who are from places like Texas, LA, places like that, where there's already a large Hispanic population, you pretty well know that. Not new information, but it is new to a lot of parts of the country. And so we have issues here around multiple ages in the workforce with different work ethics, different value ethics, not value ethics, different values on work-life balance and things like that. And that creates a challenge in itself. You have younger people who are managing older people. Again, something that wasn't there before. So you've got a lot of stuff going on, and at the same time, you have fewer of those Gen Xers around, so you have to provide better leadership development training, better management training, because you're going to take on senior positions at younger ages. And you're going to have the pool that's coming up behind them is going to be a very diverse, ethnically diverse pool. So a whole bunch of interesting challenges here with this demographic piece, and really learning as organizations to value diversity, to value inclusion is going to be a key core competency for any organization that's going to remain relevant. And the big problem here is that if we're honest with ourselves, and I look at ASAE, and I'm sure if you look at your own organizations, I see a lot of people who are attending meetings who are in their 50s and 60s, some 40s, not so much 20s or 30s. And if you look around other organizations, you see the same thing. And that says to me that we are not attracting the younger cohort. because I think there are two issues that are going on here. One issue is that I think the younger generation has been more jaded than the generation that I was in. And I think it really started with Watergate. I think Watergate really changed how people viewed the presidency, how people viewed government, and the fact that government was fallible, and that mistakes get made. And then, of course, you had issues and scandals around churches and other institutions that people came to respect and honor and recognize that there was stuff going on there. You had some major nonprofits that had issues around them. And then, of course, the icing on the cake is you had MCI and Enron and a few corporations that lost everything they had, too, and couldn't fulfill any promises. So the trust factor is huge right now, or not there. And so the younger population, you know, in my day, you joined first and then said, how can I help? Now, people are saying, I'm willing to help you, and after I get to know you, and I believe I can trust you, I might join you. It's a very different model than a lot of us were raised in. And you talk about the difference between a boomer and a millennial. It's huge. And a lot of it is built on trust. A lot of it is built on trust. So I think, again, there's a number of issues, and that's the workforce side. Then you got the volunteer side. And the volunteer side is huge as well, because while the Northern European ethics is around volunteering, and that's really how most of the volunteer work I've done in this country over the last 100 years. The fact of the matter is, in the Hispanic culture, volunteering, not so much. It's not a part of their fiber. It's not something that they've grown up in as part of that Hispanic culture. So volunteering is a very different thing for them. They do things as families. They do things as communities. I remember when I was with diabetes, we were trying to impact, because diabetes is huge in the Hispanic population. It's a huge issue for them. They're disproportionately affected by diabetes. And, trying to get them to volunteer in the traditional ways that we tried to get other people to volunteer, it didn't work. And we found that we had to do it around the church. We had to do it around their community. We had to do it in different ways than we did with other populations. And so how we engage that group in the work that we're doing and trying to mainstream them, we need certainly do a better job than we did 40 or 50 years ago with the black population, where what sprung up were a lot of black organizations because they didn't feel at home in the traditional organization. So we have some real race issues to get through here. They're not only going to hit us on the workforce, but they're going to hit us on the volunteer front. And it's a big time hit. This is not a small issue. It's a big time hit.